Good morning. Rob Brown here with you, broadcasting from the cold and chilly Memphis. Got what a lineup. Executive producer. This guy, I love him. He's like my younger brother, Brendan Martin, down in Ocala, Florida. Coach Matt Dean over at Rhodes College in Bryan Hall. Lauren Meadows, Gatorbait Media, another product of Ohio. I got the coaches on here today, man. They just think differently. It's like talking to portfolio managers. They understand. Don't sell a stock unless you got a better option. Hey, do this. Hit that subscribe button with your phone. Hit the QR code at the bottom of the screen. Smash subscribe. Tell your friends and your neighbors and your family. We do this. It is a passion, man. And we have great sponsors and an incredible audience that's growing every day. That's what we're here for, okay? A lot to cover today. We're going to get into recruiting on the SEC. It's still National Signing Day. Yesterday, today, and Friday. So still plenty going on, but no controversy at all about the playoff rankings. People are just completely content with what they are. That's what you do it for. I'm convinced that the playoff committee does that to elicit a reaction. So that's okay. Brendan Martin wearing the good-looking hat. You know where he got that hat? Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee, which is the eastern edge, Memphis, Germantown, Collierville. And it's right down the street from another one of our sponsors, LandersFordMemphis.com, number one Ford dealership in the Mid-South. Look, gentlemen, where do you start yesterday on National Signing Day? There's nothing like a guy, Jordan Parker at Parker High School. Jordan in Birmingham has 8 hats on the table. And puts on an LSU hat. And this is a big human. He puts on the hat. It looks like a yarmulke. It's so his head. He's a big guy. Finally, he puts on the Auburn hat and says, as his parents are on either side of him wearing Auburn hoodies, then he says, I'm going to Auburn University. Like, why the drama, Lauren, Matt? Anybody want to take a gander at that? I guess it's just fun when you're 18 to have a lot of people fawning over you. But once you get there, it's a different story.
Well, I'm not for the drama. You know me, Rob. I'm not for the foolishness. I mean,
You're
I think
old school.
you go, 2 or 3 hats, pick one, go with it. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw the viral clip of the young lady who's one of the top hurdlers in the country, is going to University of Florida, and she runs up to the hurdles and runs up to the hurdle and runs up to the hurdles and runs up to the hurdles and runs up to the hurdles, and you like, just get over the hurdle, please. Right. And then you think, okay, she's going to go to jump in jeans and a sweatshirt, hit the hurdle, and it's all going to be for naught. But finally she does, and she jumps over the hurdle. And I mean, who wouldn't want to run track for Miles Holloway here in Florida? But I'm not for the drama. I think, you make it plain. I think you go up there because it's a business decision. It's a decision that could affect you for the rest of your life. And I think but that's just generation, man. Now, I coached for years, Matt coached, the kids that I coached are now having kids that are going to college. Yeah. And I think it's that generation, and they like the show and things like that. And I'm sure that the coaches don't necessarily care for it, but they can't say much because, hey, especially if the kid comes to your school. But the drama, but at the end of the day, and we've talked about it on your show and my show, you got to get down to the business of playing football. And yesterday, a lot of quality football players, are going to have the opportunity to go to some really good schools, get an education, earn a little money, and play some football. And at the end of the day, that's what it is. And you look at some of the recruiting class, I mean, some phenomenal talents. I mean, you look at Florida's class, very good class, but 8th in the SEC, which just speaks to the level of talent that is in this conference and what is available to some of these coaches. And then things are going to get real interesting with the transfer portal as well. So, kind of started off a lot of good football players and some really good classes. And like I said, when Florida is finishing 8th and they're pretty pleased with their class, that lets you know the talent level that exists, basically nationwide.
Yeah, Matt, I think 10 of the top 16 classes yesterday on National Signing Day. Then there's today and tomorrow left, but most of the impact was felt yesterday. 10 of the top 16 in the SEC and Oregon. I mean, Oregon recruits nationally.
Yeah.
Kind of speak to that because they are building. They just go from one coach to the next, and it just keeps happening. It ain't by accident.
Well, obviously, guys, I'm a little biased because my son's the director of player personnel. So I'm going to tell you, Lauren, you're 100% correct. I see some of the content on social media, and I talked to my son, Ty, and he said, Dad, it's just the world we live in. Like, for example, every time you see a commit paperwork come in, you're going to see a little bit 35 to 40-second blurb on social media if you follow your institution's social media in terms of signing day. So it's a cinematic thing, too. One thing I'll say about Florida, I don't care if they're 8, 10, or whatever. They got the quarterback right. And as long as Lagaway's there, they're going to have a chance to win a lot of games and get in the playoffs next year and honestly get in the SEC championship game. And I know that's probably a bold statement after a 7-5 year, but the way they finished right now, them and South Carolina are two teams that you would not want to play if they were a 12 or 11 seed. I'm just being completely honest. And then, finally, besides the signing date, and this is what's so complex now, I'm even talking to my son, and they're having meetings with players during their bye week 2 weeks ago on portal management, which guys are going to leave, which guys are going to stay. And they're trying to compete for a national championship. And finally, I'll just speak to Dan Lanning. He has been an incredible influence in that locker room. Oregon was built back in the Rich Brooks and Bellotti days, and Chip Kelly had some nice teams there. But Dan Lanning has tried to make them, if you haven't watched Oregon play in 3 years on the line of scrimmage, they resemble an SEC team. They didn't resemble that when he got there.
Yeah,
they're starting to be more physical on defense. They had against Washington guys, they tied a school record, 10.5 sacks. Damari Caldwell, they got from Houston on the interior. Derek Harmon from Michigan State. I really love Kobe Savage, the portal guy from Kansas State. So Dan is recruiting high school kids every year, but he's going to go in the portal for position and need. And if you are not managing your program almost like NFL free agency guys right now, you're look what happened to Mac Brown. I love Mac Brown. One of the best men in America.
No doubt. Absolutely.
But this level of recruiting and portal managing and dealing with Rob, those things you talk about on signing day, it was time. And unfortunately, sometimes the hardest thing as a coach to do is let go. Well, I did it after 26 years and went into administration. And I can tell you, there are days I miss the heck out of coaching. I don't miss getting on the charter bus, but I do miss practice, and I do miss game day. But it's a really fun time. And, like right now, Rob, I hate to say it, but even though Auburn 5-7 is not bowl eligible, you miss some practices, it helps you in recruiting right now because all your attention is focused on the portal right now and finishing up the signing day.
It is. And I think both of y'all are so spot on in your assessment of it. You miss the practices. It's the day-to-day relationships. And just, again, look at all of us volunteer coaching our kids' sports. I mean, over the years, I did it 14 years. God, it's a privilege. It's an honor. And you also have to shoot straight with these kids. I don't care. They're 12, 13, 14. You better learn. If you quit out here because this is too tough, you will quit everything tough the rest of your life. And if you don't teach them that now, they'll never learn it until it's too late. And looking at what's going on, Lauren, across the SEC, Gators 10th, 11th in the country, 8th in the SEC. All things are relative, but Florida has an elite level quarterback. Let's kind of bounce around the SEC. I'm going to point to Exhibit A here in the background, this chart of the SEC schools. But you look at if it's a recruiting class is a success if you meet your needs, okay? So, Alabama, Arkansas, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, LSU, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas A&M, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, perennially the cellar dweller of the conference. They go 6-6 this year and beat the number one team in the country, Alabama, who will get in the playoffs. Lauren, name me another conference in America, top to bottom, that's anywhere close to the SEC, but also we cannibalize ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, top to bottom, there is none. I mean,
Yeah.
let's just face it. I mean, you look at the states that produce the best players year in, year out. Now they're all basically, if you take out California, they're all in the SEC. I mean, so now you have every state that, I mean, even the state you guys are in. I mean, there's some really good football players in the Nashville, Knoxville,
Yeah.
Memphis area. I mean, just the reach now that basically every state is connected. I mean, I think I can't remember the kid's name, a kid out of Cleveland Heights was committed to Kentucky all season long, flips to Missouri. I mean,
Yeah.
the reach that you can have now within this conference is unbelievable. And I mean, there is none. I mean, I'm a Big Ten guy at heart, my second home, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not close. I mean, you just do not have top to bottom. And with the transfer portal and guys wanting to play in the SEC, a kid like Ricky Pearsall, who could have gone to Oregon, decides, hey, I want to play in the SEC and bet on myself. I want to see if I can play at what people deem the highest level. And you just see more and more and more of that. And like you said, even with a school like Vanderbilt, Nashville has a lot to offer.
They do.
Yeah.
And if you can really present that from an NIL perspective and things like that, they're going to continue with not just guys like Diego Pavia, but others that are going to go there and say, hey, I'm going to play against the best of the best. And this is somewhere that I can, increase my brand financially, but also from an NFL, from a physical standpoint.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there is none. I mean, we're really, if we want to sit here and argue about it, we could, but it would be a waste of time. And I think that's where, when you look at like Florida, 11th, in the country, 8th in the SEC, but like Matt said, when you get the quarterback right,
Yeah.
there are going to be people that have 30 to 40 starts at a lot of positions that are going to come and say, okay, if I can catch this phenomenon that is DJ Lagway on the way up,
Yes.
I can be a part of it. It's not only going to be good for Florida, but it's going to be good for me as well. So I think that there are positions of need and priority that Florida is going to look at, and they will be made more attractive because of the presence of DJ Lagway.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know what, Matt? When you take a look at signing date is 3 days. Monday, the portal opens the 9th through the 28th of December.
I know.
So it's like when you were a kid, I remember we had, all my friends in the neighborhood, all my Jewish friends, they had Hanukkah. They got a present 8 straight days. And then we have Christmas come along. Well, that's kind of what's about to happen, But you also have to worry, unfortunately, about some presents being taken away. Some of your guys entering the portal, and then you can go get some. But I think we've proven one thing. You ain't going to build an offensive line long-term out of the portal, are you, Matt?
No, it's very difficult. I'll give you a great example. Oregon's number one right now, playing pretty well. But the first 2 weeks, they struggled a little bit because they had one of their starters out, and they were trying to make some additions, and they lost Jackson Powers Johnson to the Raiders, second round or late first round pick, their center last year. So offensive line takes time, and it's one of those things. If you have a good offensive line coach and you make progress, a lot of times teams get better through the course of the season, guys. Everyone looks at the skill position. It's really a line of scrimmage. And, Oregon this year was a finalist with Texas for the Joe Moore Award. Both offensive lines are really, really good. And looking at Florida's future too, one of the things that, Lauren, I'd be curious your opinion on this, but maybe besides Arch Manning, who's probably going to be the starter for Texas next year, and I take Lagway over him right now. Who's got a better quarterback situation in 2025 than Florida in the SEC?
Nobody.
Nobody.
I mean, nobody. And maybe in the country. When you look at it, from a who's the man alpha, whose locker room it is.
My gosh, those kids love him, Lauren.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys love playing with him.
No doubt about it.
And another story that's kind of lost sometimes, I love his loyalty. He obviously wants to help Coach Napier get to the top of the mountain, okay? He's been raised right. He's built right. He's a good locker room presence. He's a leader on the field. I even watched him during timeouts when he's interacting with Billy and also the offensive coordinator. It's just like, man, that dude's got it. And, no disrespect to some of these other schools, but like DeBoer had Michael Penix Jr. the last 2 years. That's the reason why he got the Alabama job. And you know what? You know, Alabama's much better team when Milroe gets out of the pocket and runs. And for so many games, it looked like they were trying to make him something different than a runner. And sometimes you just got to admit what you got and you got to roll with it. But I'm really, unfortunately, I'm an Iowa fan, Lauren. I grew up in the Midwest, but I'm now I'm a Oregon Duck, Iowa fan, and I'm a big fan of your quarterback. I just thought it was one of the best stories in the second half of college football this year. Besides the Vanderbilt quarterback, Diego, as you mentioned, he's a great story as well.
Yeah.
So,
Lauren, is it blasphemy to say, like what I say on the show a lot, that DJ Lagway he's not physically as impressive, muscles and strength as Tim Tebow, but he's got an arm better than any Gator quarterback. That, golly, they've had some great ones. Danny Warfel, Danny had a hell of an arm, but DJ Lagway throws those 50 and 60-yard ropes. But there's just some people. Dad told me years ago, there's certain people that when you meet them in a handshake, they just exude confidence in you. And he was talking about a guy named Fred Smith in Memphis that founded FedEx. And you know what I'm saying? When you're you've talked to DJ Lagway, okay? I don't know him, you do. There's a trust factor with you. Kind of expand on that, because I've got a list of things we're going to get into on Rapid Fire Thursday, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I mean, I've sat with him at a softball game amongst it's DJ Lagway and 4 70-year-old guys that love softball. That's right. And DJ Lagway is just sitting there talking softball, talking sports. How's it going? It's going well. Looking forward to it. No arrogance, he's a guy's guy. He's a dude's dude. Like you said, he was raised right. And I mean, but then he's special. You look at the play against Florida State where, shrugs off the defensive lineman, helmet's a little crooked, and then he throws a dime to Chimera, and it's just like, and I mean, we're sitting in the press box and everybody's kind of like, and there's no cheering in the press box, and I just loudly say to everybody, "It's okay to clap. It's okay to clap." And I mean, because everybody's like, "Okay, like wow," and because you have that, and no offense to anybody, because other guys have that. There's a bunch of great kids, but for what Florida has, you talk about throwing. I mean, they haven't had a deep ball thrower like that probably since Rex Grossman. I mean, Rex could let it rip pretty quick. Yeah. But I mean, with the flick of the wrist, no feet on the ground, anything like that, the ability to put the ball on the money on the deep shot is just something that he excels at. And they, from an X and O standpoint, and I'm an X and O guy, they have not even scratched the surface on his ability to run the football yet, which is going to give them another facet in the run game. And just one more thing that Monday through Thursday as an opponent, you got to prepare for. Yeah. And so once they really tap that in, if he can stay healthy and his ability to run the football, and I don't think he's going to wow. I mean, I would actually say Tebow's probably a better runner of the football.
I would too.
But what he gives you is that ability to get downhill and, at least be a threat in that run game that they haven't had. And I think is what makes Billy's offense run is that threat. So, I mean, you're talking about a guy that, I would say 2 more years at Florida, it will be one of the premier quarterbacks in the country. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Matt, another guy in the SEC that Roman Harper was on the show with us a week ago Friday, and Roman said, look at Lenoris Sellers, South Carolina. He goes, this guy, when they're trying to pull him down, is throwing touchdown passes. And that's a talent right there. And look what he's done, Matt, to raise South Carolina to 9-3. Look, a couple of close losses. We know LSU, South Carolina game, and South Carolina at Alabama. But here they are at 9-3, and they're playing some of the best football in America, hot off that win at Clemson this past Saturday.
So I want to touch, before I go to Lenoris, I want to touch quickly on what Lauren said. And Lauren, I have a couple comps because, I've never met the young man. I just watched from my television set.
Sure.
But the throw that he stepped up in the pocket on the run in the LSU game, that was a pivotal throw late.
Oh, yeah.
you know, that kind of, it was a deep ball. It was just like a dart, you know, straight down the seam.
Right on the body, put it right
Yeah.
on. Yeah,
and it really helped put the game away. I think he's got almost some Jalen Hurts in him from a leadership standpoint, but I see as a player some Caleb Williams in him as well. I mean, I think he's going to be a Heisman candidate. I mean, I really do, you know, and those things are determined by sometimes team success as well, as we know. But going to Lenore's, there was a run. He's done it all year, guys, but there was a run in the Clemson game. I mean, this young man, when he gets downhill, he's almost like Derrick Henry with the football. And we're talking about a quarterback. He gets downhill. He's going outside. All of a sudden, he just cuts on a dime inside up against Clemson to get the game-winning score. Clemson had him like in 3rd and 16, guys. He drops back the pass. He knew he was running. I mean, and I think, Lauren, it's a really good point. I think this year they didn't scratch. They just barely scratched the surface with the playbook for DJ. And I think you'll see some of those things from a more intentionality, from some option stuff for him. Not RPO necessarily, but just the ability to run him some more in certain situations, you know. So, God, those two guys, I would say going into next year, Lenore Sellers, DJ Lagway, who's got better quarterback situations right now? I know people will say there's portal options. I know everyone's going to say Arch Manning, and I get that. But, you know, Arch has had a small sample size this year. Yeah. Boy, DJ got to play in some critical games and really helped their program big time.
Yeah, well, Marcel Reed at Texas A&M. We had one of our interns, Oakley McFerrin.
He's really good, no doubt.
Yeah, he's good too. Yeah, we kind of forgot him. We need to apologize. He's in that mix too.
Well, I'll tell you what was cool about it. We had Oakley McFerrin, one of our 2 interns, on yesterday. He's a freshman at Auburn, and Oakley played at MBA. He was, you know, all Davidson County honorable mention, all Metro wide receiver at MBA, and of course, you know, Marcel Reed's a redshirt freshman, so he played with him, you know, all but this year. And he said he's a great player. He goes, his father, I think, is the head football coach at Tennessee State University in Nashville, and just a tremendous guy. He's his coach's son. I'm not sure if he's the head
Tennessee State. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think his dad's the head coach at Tennessee State, or I know he's a coach.
Maybe a coordinator or something. Yeah, okay. Eddie George is the head coach.
Right, that's right. Never mind. Yeah, he's on the staff there. That's right. Eddie George is Heisman Trophy winner in '95 at Ohio State University.
Great dude, actually.
Yeah. Great dude. He works out a little bit too. Good God.
His wife's she's a keeper too. So yeah.
I mean, I loved watching him when he played, and then he played for the Titans, and he's cool. But you know, you think about up and down on the list on these quarterbacks. And then, you know, here's the one that's kind of crazy. Who got the biggest NIL deal of anybody coming in the SEC? Nico Iamaleava at Tennessee. Yeah. And I don't want to call him 207.5, but I'm going to say it. He's averaging 207.5 yards passing per game. But he got better, I think, as the season went along. Coach Ellis Johnson was on the show with us Monday. Longtime defensive coordinator, a lot of experience, and he's coached with Spurrier, Stallings. He coached with Gus at Auburn, got him an SEC championship. He said, Tennessee's offense, the success or lack of is predicated upon completions of those deep balls, explosive plays. And, you know, and you can even simplify that when Navy runs the triple option. Matt, how many times did we see them play a really good Memphis team and they'd complete a couple of deep balls down the middle? All of a sudden, everybody's backing up. And so those draw plays underneath are wide open for the running game. Next thing you know, they've run for 250 or 300 yards. Brad Logan, Lauren, stay on with us if you can. I just figured you had to go, but Matt's going to stay on at a little bit of a late start this morning. Sure. Yeah, Brad Logan's going to join us from Logan Media Network, and he's a big part of the Ole Miss broadcast scene down there in the Grove in Oxford. I hope he's not trying to text me because my phone is off if there's any problem. So, you know, got to. And we have Starlink on the way, ladies and gentlemen. It's on the way. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, it'll be here. If it can get here sooner, if you're listening, Starlink, Mayday, Mayday. Our executive producer, Brendan Martin. Let's just say this. You know, you hear about emergency room trauma surgeons, 15 car wreck, all the people come in. Brendan Martin, he's one of those trauma surgeons that's fixing stuff. You don't even know what he's doing. Lauren and I know it. You know it, Matt.
Absolutely.
And I tell you who we need. We got to think about this. Nico Iamaleava. And you mentioned Arch Manning. Jackson Arnold. Remember when he was signed with Oklahoma? highest rated offensive recruit in school history.
Ever.
Okay. And it got so bad this season after they benched him, he came back in. One of the TV announcers goes, well, here goes Arnold Jackson back into the game. Can't even get his damn name.
Different strokes. Arnold Jackson.
Yes, Arnold. Remember Hey Arnold, the cartoon?
Yeah.
He had like a football. It was weird, like a hammerhead shark with the eyes on the end of his head. But let's think about him. Brady Cook is done. Mississippi State guys, Jeff Lebby. Their quarterback got hurt. They had to make a change. Ole Miss, Austin Simmons, guys, next year. You know why Auburn probably got Deuce Knight? Because in the first quarter in the Georgia game, Jackson Dart rolled an ankle, was out for a series. Austin Simmons came in. I mean, here we go. It's kind of scary. Looking up the SEC. We don't know about them, but they're coming.
I'm taking DJ.
Yeah.
Well, I
agree.
No. I mean, but it just speaks to and then you guys were talking about, you talk about recruiting. It is there is not much difference between, for instance, I'm an old receiver coach. So there's not much difference between the number one receiver in the country and the 10th best receiver in the country.
Right.
It's how you coach them. It's their approach to the game. It's how they understand the game. And, I'll give you a perfect example. If I got the 7th best receiver in the country and he's playing for Billy Gonzalez at Florida, you might as well pencil him in as a first rounder.
That's right.
I mean, because
correct.
The ability to, and as someone who prides himself in taking average kids and making them better when I was a coach, there is something that you talk about a Mac Brown. Mac Brown at his height at North Carolina, when I was in Durham coaching there, he could make you believe that you had everything you needed to be as successful as you needed to be. And it's guys that can do that sort of thing. So, when you look at these guys, I mean, all of these guys are talented football players. I would even say with some changes on offense that Jackson Arnold could still reach the potential that, I mean, we've seen it. We've seen things change. And so you have all of these players, but I think that speaks to it used to be none of the good quarterbacks came from the SEC.
Right.
Now they all do, and so I think that's, I think that's just to where this game, not to even talk about basketball, but like last night, it was like, what was it, 10-2 so far in the ACC, SEC. I mean, look at the SEC in basketball. I mean, just the level of talent throughout this country and guys that are showing up at these schools in the Southeastern Conference is unbelievable.
Yeah. All right, let's do this. Brad's going to be on with us in just a minute, but it's National Signing Day. We've been talking a lot about recruiting and what's coming back next year. And we're going to get into it heavy again tomorrow with Tony Barnhart on the show. But Texas and Georgia in the SEC championship. Golly, let's start with you, Matt. What do you think's going to happen this time when they play? And I think you talked with Coach Johnson and me Monday about it. But big one in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, home of the $2 hot dog and the $250 ticket.
So obviously,
no doubt,
in game one, Georgia turned them over maybe 3 times. I could be wrong, and really 4. I apologize, Lauren, and dominated the game from a line of scrimmage standpoint at Austin. Okay, so number one, if I'm Texas, my message has got to be no turnovers, right? And obviously some doubt creeps in your mind a little bit when you go 8 overtimes to win your last game against your rival. But let me tell you something. Georgia Tech has a fine football team. There's Georgia got there with a win. Obviously, they're in the SEC championship. They've had some really good wins this year. I just like Georgia personally. I'll tell you what, like the Texas A&M game, we talked about this, should have been like 31-0. The deflected pass for a pick six, the block punt, A&M was kept in that game. I thought Texas's line of scrimmage was phenomenal, especially in that goal line stand. So I think it's going to be a really close game. I think it's going to be lower scoring than people think. But I'm going to go Georgia by 3.
All right, Georgia by 3. Lauren, Texas, hot as a pepper, coming in there. They're playing basically at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But, good teams, you're not afraid of where you play. But
right.
What do you think's going to happen?
Well, I'm going to go Georgia. I think it'll be a closer game. It was kind of a sloppy game the last time, so the score, 30-50, it's kind of tough to gauge it. I just think Georgia up front is able to withstand kind of what Texas can bring. Texas is really great at all three levels defensively. I mean, one of the top. I'm not sure if they're number one still nationally, but at one time they were top defense and top 5 in every major statistical category. But I just think that Georgia knows exactly who they are. And because of Carson Beck, they feel like they can withstand anything. I mean, you think of how poorly he's played in games, but has found a way to elevate that team to wins. I think they just have, they just have it. And I think that's one of the things. I mean, you look just talent wise. The only thing that I could say is I'm not sure that if it becomes a game where Georgia has to necessarily make some plays on the perimeter, that could be that could be a telltale, because I would probably take the Texas secondary against those perimeter guys, because that's the one place that they've fallen off. The tight end, the Brock Bowers not being there, and some of those guys, not as good as they've been in the past. So it'll be interesting to see. But I'd probably say Georgia and another close one.
Yeah, I'm picking Georgia as well. As good as Texas played the last part of the season, I still like Georgia with their back to the wall. And when we thought that Carson Beck could not do it, he wasn't the man, and he didn't. He wasn't. He just wasn't. I'm like, well, he is. They did, because they did it against Tennessee, down 10-0, tied it up 17 all at the half, and you look back at that game, and you say to yourself, holy cow, man, they dominated Tennessee. In the second half, they completely shut Tennessee down. I just think Georgia, when they are determined, and you give Kirby Smart some time to prepare, they're really a dangerous team. They're probably the most talented team in the league. So let's bring in Brad Logan from Logan Media Network over in Oxford. Covers really all things Mississippi. We've got a panel here: Lauren Meadows, Gator Bait Media Coach Matt Dean in Memphis. Brad, is it fair to say that Ole Miss is in a new era now, to where I've been telling all my Ole Miss friends, and I got a ton of them, I said, when y'all start winning 10 and 11 games a year, you're never going to be happy with 8 or 9. And here it is at 9-3. Not that they want to get rid of Lane Kiffin. He's going to give you a chance to win every game. But there's a different level of intensity in Oxford. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are saying this season is a failure. I find it hard to believe that you could call a possible 10-win season a failure in Oxford. It's not a place to where it's common to win, back-to-back 10-win seasons with an opportunity to win a third. So I don't expect this to be a season deemed as a failure. I do think it's one that has a lot of disappointment. You can look back at the Kentucky game and look back at the LSU game, and, of course, the game against Florida when Ole Miss had a perfect opportunity to make the college football playoff. They didn't do so. So looks like it's probably going to be a Florida Bowl game, depending on where Alabama slots in the college football playoff. But this is a situation where Ole Miss is recruiting at a very high level. Right now, they're the composite ranking of 15 in the country, which is only good enough for about 8 or 9 in the SEC, which tells you just how strong the conference is. It was a banner day yesterday for Ole Miss, getting, once again, the top-ranked player in Mississippi, and Caleb Cunningham, the wide receiver out of Ackerman, Mississippi. That's the third year in a row Ole Miss has got the top-ranked player in the state of Mississippi. So they've been dominating Mississippi over the last couple of years, not only on the football field, but also in recruiting. And Lane Kiffin even made mention of that in the signing day press conference yesterday. The gap of the separation between Ole Miss and Mississippi State is possibly as large as it's ever been. Now, I do think there is an opportunity for Jeff Lebby and his staff at Mississippi State to make that gap smaller, but it's going to have to come on the recruiting trail and have to come on the football field. And what we saw yesterday on the recruiting trail is not something that lends me to believe that Mississippi State's going to decrease that separation anytime soon.
Yeah, and looking in Jeff Lebby, you know him from his time at Ole Miss. Then he goes to Oklahoma. He's Art Briles' son-in-law. That when Mike Leach died, and that was horrible. And Zach Arnett came in and kind of said, we're going to do it completely different. Did you see at that time these problems that they have now? Is that because he could have said, hey, I like that offense. I know it. I'll focus on the defense. Where did they go wrong? Is it one thing or a lot of things?
Well, I think when Mike passed, the roster was there. You had some really good offensive pieces with Will Rogers at quarterback. You had Woody Marks at tailback. You had Ra Thomas at wide receiver.
Yep.
And when Arnett was elevated to head coach, he completely circumvented the offense. And now you're asking to put a square peg into a round hole, and it just didn't work. And obviously we know that Zach Arnett would be relieved midway through the year, and it just has not came back since then. I mean, obviously hindsight's 2020. If you're President Mark Keenum, the best thing to do is to tell Zach Arnett, look, man, you're our interim coach. You have a year to get us through this, and then we will reevaluate at the end of this year because everything happened so fast. And then at that point, they should have reshuffled the deck and decided what direction to go rather than just go all hands on deck with Zach Arnett, who has done really, really good work for Ole Miss as an analyst, but was just not ready for a head coach. I do think that he's a really good football coach, and I do think he'll continue to get opportunities in the college football world, but it was just a little too much for him to deal with at that point. I just don't think Mississippi State has recovered, and they have got to go back to the drawing board, figure out their identity. I think they've done so on offense, defensively. With Cameron Hutzler, I don't know what direction they're going to go defensively. From everything that we've been told is they're going to stick with Hutzler at defensive coordinator, even though they were very, very poor this past year in almost every statistical category. But they really plugged a lot of holes. The defensive, or should I say the recruiting tactics from Mississippi State are quite different than Ole Miss. A lot of things that MSU is doing is going the JUCO route. Ole Miss kind of stuck with the high school route, and then, of course, the portal will open up in a couple of days. Ole Miss will be very heavy in the transfer portal in a couple of very key positions. But right now, you just have two different programs. And oddly enough, I will tell you, Ole Miss was able to flip linebacker Tyler Lockhart, a four-star linebacker out of Winona. I was there for the ceremony.
Yeah.
And everything's appeared to be okay. And I get a text at 8 o'clock that he has flipped back to Mississippi State. And I was like, how do you flip back to a program when you've already signed with another? So the craziest recruiting story I've ever seen. You've got a kid throwing up a land shark, and then 2 hours later, he's getting graphics from Mississippi State. Only in the state of Mississippi can this happen.
Only in the SEC, Brad. Look, Brad Logan Media Network. Brad, you are. I'm tell you what. You might have the best set of any guest we bring on the show. Are you from Bruce or Pontotoc?
I grew up in rural Calhoun County, Mississippi, but this is just kind of something I do with Max South Sports. I do a couple of shows for them, so they had a lot of hand in my backdrop. I'm just telling you. My friend Jeff Wills and his wife Leanne, they really like you a lot. I'm just telling you, guys, love having you on. You are so thoroughly prepared, and I know you do it. They do a show, Lauren and Matt, down in the Grove by the Pavilion, isn't it? Before every game, kind of like the ESPN Game Day set that y'all do. And I mean, this is where the world's going, streaming, like what we're doing. Lauren, Matt, jump in here with. I know Matt, you've got to go in a second, so you may have a question for Brad before you have to go.
Yeah, last thing I want to say is, Brad, I think one of the things that Coach Lanning has perfected reminds me of Coach Lanning in Oregon, where my son works. It's just the combination of high school recruiting with the portal position need recruiting. And I think he understands the model, the current landscape as good as anyone, if not the best in the country. And I just think that's important these days. I think you have to hit the high school market, and you're going to win some, you're going to lose some, but then you also got to reassess what you need positionally and then go out and get in the portal. And Coach Lanning's done a great job, but Coach Kiffin's done a tremendous job as well. So
yeah, Matt. I will say that Dan Lanning I had no idea you had family ties to that staff. He is the poster child for what you want in a head coach. Not only in any demographic, any part of the world, the way that they handle social media, having a donor base that he has at Oregon, and quite frankly, how you handle recruiting. And I think what Coach Lanning is doing with his supportive staff and what he's doing in the world of recruiting, the perfect encapsulation of high school recruiting versus how much you go to the portal.
Yeah.
And I think Lane Kiffin is a lot of that. I think Dan Lanning, I agree with you, Matt. I think they're very similar. But I think it's funny you said Dan Lanning. He's someone that I've talked a lot about, is the closest thing to a Nick Saban clone right now in college football than you can find. And I really like that team this year. And I think Dan Lanning is a couple of national championships away from being that prototypical Nick Saban type coach. And I think eventually you're going to hear Dan Lanning's name with some incredible numbers when you talk about big-time programs across the country. If you let a big-time program like, for example, at Ohio State with a Ryan Day that maybe can't get over the hump against Michigan next year, or maybe somehow falters down the stretch, someone like a Dan Lanning would be huge at one of your bigger players in college football. Not to say that Oregon's not,
right,
but your preeminent players in college football in the Big Ten, the SEC, he is their prototypical football coach.
Yeah, that's
Thanks,
scary.
Guys.
All right, Matt, we'll talk to you this week. Thank you.
Take care, Lauren. Good to see you.
Have a safe trip.
Yeah,
Have a
good luck.
time.
He's on his way up to Indianapolis for the Big Ten Championship, which is where, by the way, Rex Grossman's from. Lauren, Gatorbait Media, jump in here with Brad Logan.
I gotta. Well, Rex Grossman is actually from Bloomington, so
That's right.
you gonna upset the
Could
good
have been a
people of
Hoosier.
Bloomington
Right.
South, but no, I digress. Brad, speak to Lane Kiffin and the culture that he's building at Ole Miss. I think sometimes people look at the amount of transfers and some of the NIL opportunities that they've been able to provide, but just speak to, I think it's unfair sometimes to label guys as mercenaries, so to speak, but just speak to the culture that he has built with his football program that's going to allow this program to continue to build on those 10-win seasons and maybe take that next step there at Ole Miss.
Yeah, I think you look at and that's an interesting word that you use as mercenary, and I hear that a lot when you talk about the Ole Miss roster. And what I mean by that is Ole Miss goes to the portal and gets a lot of players. I mean, their defense is probably 95% transfer portal players, but there was a lot of cohesiveness on that defense. So I think both things can be true. Number one, you can be transfer heavy laden, but number two, you can have a culture. You can have a winning attitude. And I think that's one thing that Ole Miss is bred into the players and bred into the program with Pete Golding. You look at someone like a Jared Ivey, a defensive end. You look at someone like a J.J. Pegues. You look at someone like a Jackson Dart on offense, Trey Harris on offense, Jordan Watkins on offense. All of those are transfer players, Caden Priest going at tight end. But what you have in all that is a very cohesive unit, both offense and defensively. They play together as a team. They are the bedrock of this football program. But they're also transfers. I mean, they've been in the system for some of them 2 years, some of them 3 years, and then some of them like a Walter Nolan, a Pooh Paul, or 1 year. But it's all about how you adapt. And Lane Kiffin has talked a lot about in his press conferences about not staying inside the box or not even stepping outside the box. He's all about creating a brand new box. And so what Lane Kiffin is doing, I think, is very similar to what Matt was saying about what Dan Lanning was doing is understanding the culture before, changing that culture just a little bit, molding it like you want it to, creating your own particular culture, and then seeing the future. And that's one thing Lane Kiffin's been able to do is see through the trees and see kind of what the world of college football is coming. He talks about a pro mindset, and with that pro mindset, I think there are some disadvantages to that. It's less contact. It's not as much of your prototypical college football bull in the ring type defenses practices, but also that pro mindset is salary cap. It is understanding what positions you're going after during the offseason, both high school and transfer portal. And three, it's preparing teams and preparing players for the NFL. Very simple. Caleb Cunningham, the 5-star wide receiver from Ackerman, told me yesterday he came to Ole Miss for 2 reasons. He came to Ole Miss for one reason, because they get NFL players in the league, specifically wide receivers like A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf and Dawson Knox. And 2, he came to Ole Miss because of Lane Kiffin. So Ole Miss has those 2 things going for them. And to me, Lauren, that is what you talk about, is laying out a pro mindset and laying out a culture when you get players into the league and you get players wanting to play for your program.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you look at you're about to get another receiver in the league, Trey Harris, who, if he wouldn't have got hurt, I think would have won the Biletnikoff. So, definitely, I mean, he's been, and that's what I said. I think that sometimes those of us that look on the outside looking in, kind of see it, like you said, just a bunch of hired guns. And I think it's unfair to coaches who grind on a daily basis when you just look at it and say, well, the only reason they're winning is because they have all this money and they're spending this money. There's a Monday through Thursday process that occurs. And I think Lane Kiffin should be given credit to that, particularly at a place like Ole Miss, where that's not always been it may have been the standard, but that's not always been the result that they've gotten, from some of those teams.
Yeah. But Brad, when you look at Ole Miss, you talked about Walter Nolan, and he was a kid. God, he was in Memphis at St. Benedict for a year. Then he went to Powell over in Knoxville. And Matt Dean's son, Tyler, helped recruit him to A&M. Hell of a player. And you hit on something. 95% of that defense is portal players. And I heard a figure. I don't know if it was you that said it or somebody. It was like 41 players could be gone in January in terms of eligibility running out, going to the NFL early or what have you. If that's true, and then I look at this recruiting class, 14th in the country in high school. And Ole Miss is on the 24/7 Talent Composite Index. I think they're at number 20 on the list that came out a couple of weeks ago. Does that factor in players' rankings from high school when they come in from the portal, or do they get a new portal ranking? Because, Ole Miss, whatever they do in high school, they're going to do even better in the portal. Not many schools can say that.
They 24/7 Sports and On3, I believe, they receive an updated value of a transfer portal. So they have a new composite ranking, from what I understand. You talk about how many players are not going to play in the bowl game. It's really irrelevant. The only thing that really matters when you talk about this particular bowl game in Florida is allowing some younger players to play. Secondly, you have a lot of these players that we talked about, or at least signed with Ole Miss yesterday. They're going to be early enrollees, so they can begin practice. They're going to get 30 practices between December and January, whenever the bowl game is, to get ready for, their season next year. So that says a lot about, so many people are bogged down with, was this season a failure? I've already said I can't call a season a failure if you win 10 wins at Ole Miss.
Agreed.
It was a disappointment, yes. So everybody's really bogged down as, the dam is broken. It doesn't matter. Ole Miss is not making the playoff. Everything's dead and gone. There's some truth to that, about 5%. The rest of it is not true. That Lane Kiffin is getting ready for the next go-round, which is next year. And then who's to say next year or the year after we won't have a 16-team playoff. So I think by having those 30 practices, allowing Austin Simmons to get some reps at quarterback, depending on who's coming back for the bowl game and that sort of thing. But Ole Miss has a ton of young talent on the offensive line that they need to get some game action. They've got a lot of talent across that defensive front, some 5-stars that signed last year, and not to mention how much of a portal grab they're going to get this year. The future is very bright at Ole Miss, and I look for very, very big things next year.
Yeah, make sure for the record, I wasn't saying 41 guys were not going to play in the bowl game. I should have prefaced that by saying after the last game, there's 41 guys that could be gone from eligibility.
I don't know the specific number. But if you told me it was 40, I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out. I'm not sure where I got that, so I don't want to say. But either way, most of them I'm sure will play in the bowl game. But living in Memphis and watching the Ole Miss fan base, it's been a lot of fun because there used to be the Grove was you went for the tailgate. Now they're going to the damn games. I mean, and you see it firsthand out there doing your show by the pavilion. But then you got Ole Miss basketball. And I know you love basketball too. We hadn't even started talking about basketball. We'll get into that more. But you got Chris Beard there, the pavilion. And man, that is a great place to watch. Hey, they also have great food there, Raising Cane chicken tenders. Very few sports arenas have any good food. Brad, looking at this SEC championship game, Ole Miss played Georgia, dominated the game, won 28-10. You didn't play Texas. You did play Oklahoma. What do you see happening Saturday in Atlanta? Georgia win, Texas win. It's a rematch.
I like Texas a lot. I think they've kind of got to pave the way. Quinn Ewers has looked really good this year. I think Texas also gets a little bit of a bad rap by saying they didn't play anybody. Well, if you start looking through their schedule and seeing who they played, and maybe some teams that we didn't think were very good are actually the teams that are pretty good. So I think the SEC as a whole this year, with the exception of maybe Kentucky and Mississippi State, were really good this year. And this has been a fun season to watch. It's been a lot of upsets. And people that said that the college football playoff compounded with the NIL are going to break college football, well, that's obviously not the case. It has made it even more an enjoyable product. But what Sark has done with Texas, I think with that type of machine they have in Austin, incredible facilities, a huge NIL program, I think Texas is an absolute team to be watching down the stretch. The team, I just can't get away from Oregon. You talk about the world of college football. I love what Dan Lanning is doing. And that's my team to win it all. I really like Oregon this year. They've got a top to bottom, a really good football team.
Yeah, it is amazing because you've had a series of coaches that have gone out there. And it didn't just happen in the last 10 years. I mean, you go back, Rich Brooks, Mike Bellotti, but they've always – the one area where they've not been as strong, Brad, has been the line of scrimmage. Say something real quick, Brad, about Landers Ford, number one Ford dealership in the Mid-South. LandersFordMemphis.com, open Monday through Saturday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., the service department. Great service department. They will actually pick you up at your house and bring you. It's a convenient service. Sales for autos, cars, trucks, SUVs, Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Ask for Brad Bellamy, the general manager, our good friend. They'll walk you through the process. It's a great dealership. Poplar in Houston Levy, LandersFordMemphis.com. If you didn't buy your last vehicle from Landers, you probably paid too much. Brad, another thing before we let you go, you look at the SEC in football this year, and Ellis Johnson was on the show with us Monday. Are we cannibalizing ourselves to a point where it's hurting us? And do you also think this will kind of shut down the push for 9 or even in extreme cases 10 SEC games a year? Where do we go from here?
I think we're closer than we've ever been to a two conference superpower conference, whether it be the Big Ten in some form of the Big 12 and the ACC, maybe a third power conference than we've ever been. And so I expect that to happen. We've got to have some type of collective bargaining. We've got to have some type of college football commissioner overseeing all of this. Right now, the SEC and in large part the Big Ten are running rampant with incredible NIL programs with no regulation whatsoever. There needs to be some type of regulation. And I'm not, I don't know the collective bargaining, just like the NFL is perfect, but I know they've got it pretty much figured out. And you're always going to have teams like Texas, Ohio State, and then you're always going to have teams like Vanderbilt, Mississippi State. And the NFL has that. I mean, you got larger market teams and smaller market teams. So I do think there's a happy medium somewhere in between. But right now, just running roughshod and cash flowing all over the place, it's not good for the sport. And I think at some point, Greg Sankey's name gets brought up a lot. I mean, maybe it's Ward Manuel, the college football playoff chair. Yeah. But someone has to step in and be a commissioner over college football, because I do think we're closer than we've ever been to a 2 or 3 power conference schedule. And then at that point, you put things together and have a playoff very similar, I think, to the NFL is what would be best. And move the games to campus. Get these off neutral sites. Yeah. Let's enjoy an Ohio State home game or an Alabama home game in the playoff. I think that would be much more enjoyable for the fans. Bring it back to the fans. Seed this thing and let's have a true tournament. And let's make a group of 5 tournament on its own. I love Memphis. You know me. Yeah. I love the Tigers. I love Tulane. Tulane has a special part of my heart. But programs like that deserve their own specific playoff. And I think at some point we need to look at the American, the Mountain West, and the group of 5 teams. They need to have their own playoff, including the Sun Belt and American, all those teams.
Jackie Sherrill said that on this show a couple of times in the last few months. He said, I guarantee you have a conference, the superpowers, and he talked about this 32 years ago, and then you have one like with the Memphises and the Tulanes and the other schools, it'll be just as important to them, Brad, as it is to the schools like Ohio State and Alabama and Michigan. And I think that's where we're going. I agree with you. It's just how long is it going to take us to get there? And I will say this. The one thing you don't want to hear is that Larry Ellison has been spotted at dinner with one of your top recruits, the CEO and the founder of Oracle. The guy's worth over $200 billion. I mean, that's just change. I don't know what he helped Michigan with, or his wife is a big Michigan fan now, but it is a scary thought. Brad, I know you got to get going. You got a busy day ahead of you. Let people know how they can follow you because you're putting out great content, and we'll get you back on here very soon talking some Ole Miss basketball. I know you cover all things in the state of Mississippi, and I'm with you. Back-to-back 10-win seasons for Memphis. They go down and get that big win at Tulane the other day. There's got to be a way where they can feel like, okay, we have a championship course as well, because we know as the system as it is now, one, maybe in an extreme case, two at-large teams from the group of 5 conferences can get in. That's going to have to change at some point. But again, let them know how they can follow you. And always appreciate you being on with us.
Yeah, Twitter X, Brad Logan COTE is where the main hub is. We're Brad Logan Media on Facebook. And then we're, of course, a member of Inside the Rebels. We work there for the good folks at 24/7 Sports. That's at Rebs247.com.
All right. Hey, thank you so much, man. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, Brad.
Lauren, and we're going to wrap it up here. Let me say something too about again. Except what can we say about Brendan? We're working through some issues. A lot of cyber shoppers right now. Starlink is on the way, folks, and it's going to be awesome. But I want to say something about Winter Timber Outdoors. You saw the QR code up there a minute ago. Located down in Athens, Alabama. They have a growth plan to cover the whole Southeastern Conference footprint. They broke ground a couple of weeks ago at the new store down in Auburn on Opelika Highway. They're looking at Athens and Fayetteville and all these different markets. They have all your shooting sports covered. Over 2,000 shotguns, rifles, and handguns with a fully trained staff. They'll get you what you need, what you can handle. And if you turkey hunt, dove hunt, deer hunt, quail hunt, goose hunt, grouse hunt, if you're a big game hunter, you're going out west to get you a Dall sheep, like Jim Shockey. He shot every mammal in North America. He needs to be shopping at Winter Timber Outdoors. Kenny Winter, Dylan Monroe, what a team they've got there. But you go to that store in Athens, Alabama, right there on Highway 72, going there, you will be blown away by the service and the competence of the staff. Great gear, huge Sitka dealer. They've got all the gear that you need. They've got deer stands. They've got all your feed, your corn for your food plots, everything. Winter Timber Outdoors. Proud to be associated with them and have them. And also, it is Christmas season. They're open now every day of the week, including Sundays, 12 until 5, and then Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company. Now, look, you live in Memphis, go out to Collierville. Got the square out there. A lot of great restaurants out there to eat at. Hewlett & Dunn has over 7,000 pairs of boots for men and women. They've got great-looking women's clothing, women's purses, bags, luggage, Barber, Filson, STS, Duckhead, Old South, Devil Dog jeans. Lauren, these Devil Dog jeans are great. It's a World War I Marine started the company, the Devil Dogs Marines. They're awesome. If you're a 34, you'll wear a 32. That's the way they fit. Makes you feel good about yourself, especially when you've been going back and forth to the table and the feedback on at Thanksgiving and Christmas. As Elvis used to say, I love holidays because holidays means getting together with friends and family. And when we get together, that means eating. And I love that. Excuse me, pass the salt shaker, unscrew the top, put around some of that. But golly, man, it is an awesome place. Hewlett & Dunn, Charles Hall, the owner, his wife Laura, make it the homiest, most friendly store when you go in. It's just great stuff. And they've usually got a 50% off rack. They always do. And they're bringing in new stuff all the time. They've even got handmade belts and leather from the Amish. Man, it's an awesome store, Hewlett and Dunn Boot and Clothing Company.com. Hey, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. We're the most blessed people in the world. The stronger you make yourself, the stronger you can be to help others. And Lauren, I want to say something. My wife, Audrey, works at a clinic. She tests kids. 90% of them are from rural, East Arkansas. You wouldn't believe. I mean, some of these kids don't have socks, a winter coat, whatever like that. I might have the greatest wife in the history of the world, what she does on her own for these kids. Yeah. And we're gonna do a lot to help make them have a great Christmas. But awesome having your ass on the show today.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
I love being on your show with you Tuesday night.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Appreciate it.
You're so focused, but you know what's cool? First time we've ever had 2 D3 coaches on simultaneously, as they say in the country, at the same time. Lauren, and also help us support breast cancer research. Lisa, she's going to take all the money that she earns in this competition and give it to people who were hit by these hurricanes down in Florida. What a good-hearted woman. Brendan knows her. Anything we put on this show, we're trying to help other people. And we thank you so much for watching us every day. But Lauren, the story continues to evolve in the SEC. But DJ Lagway, when you give people hope and you got a quarterback and you've been around him, if you ever want to bring him on this show, the night show, I'd love to just hear his philosophy.
Right.
I know he's a Texas kid, but there's so many great stories right now. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us, everybody.
Absolutely, man.
We'll be back tomorrow morning. Yeah, and for executive producer Brendan Martin, thanks for watching. Hit all those buttons and subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow.
I have a good one.
Same here. You do. Hope Brendan, there he is. Okay.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.